Welcome back, everybody. Appreciate you coming back, and if you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. What we got for you guys today is you guys have asked me to make a video on the Kandahar giant. So guess what? That's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to go ahead and tell you the story, and then I have a few audio interviews that I found that I'm going to play for you guys. One from a soldier that was actually there firing on this giant. Another from another soldier that entered the military later on and heard all about the stories while he was in the military. And then finally, an interview from a pilot that supposedly piloted this beast when it was dead up out of there so they could bring it back to America. So basically what happened is in 2002, over in the Kandahar region of Afghanistan, not the city but the region, up in the mountains, an operation called Operation Anaconda was going on in the north part of Kandahar region. So there was a patrol sent out to look for Taliban fighters in the caves, up on the mountains, things like that. And they were supposed to check in regularly. They weren't checking in. So basically, another patrol was sent out to look for them. This patrol was up in the mountains on a goat trail looking for the missing patrol, and they come upon this ledge up on this kind of cliff type area, and there was bones, human remains, American military communication devices scattered all around. And then all of a sudden, this huge giant comes out of the cave roaring at them. They said it had red hair. It was brandishing this huge pike. They said it was like 12 to 15 feet tall. So what happens is they get stunned. They're like, man, what is that? And they're just standing there looking for a second. And then all of a sudden, one of the dudes open fires, and the dude starts running him down, and he spikes him with the pike. He skewers him, holds him up in the air. Meanwhile, the guy's platoon or whatever, they see what happens, and they start going off. They start shooting this thing in the face over and over and over, which obviously ended up killing it. They killed the giant. It's laying there. Their friend is dead. This thing had 6 fingers and 6 toes and a double row of teeth. It was huge. They get a helicopter, they come in, they put this thing on a huge military pallet. Well, first what they do is they put it in some cargo netting to get it off the cliff face. And then they fly it out to another airport, they put it on a huge plane on a military pallet, and then fly it out and then fly it to America. That is crazy. Now this has been corroborated, like I said, in this video by 3 different audio interviews that I have for you. And I got the soldiers' interviews from Watchers 10 DNA. It's a DVD. I got some audio from that. And if you guys aren't familiar with that DVD, I recommend it. And the pilot interview is from Coast to Coast AM. And I'll leave links for both in the description. Let's get to it. So I'm going to go ahead and use Google Earth Map here. But to be honest with you guys, there is no pinpointable cave or mountain that they give. And the area of Kandahar, Afghanistan is pretty big. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to find some areas that I think fit the description. Now I'm going to show you different areas because, like I said, I don't know which one it is. All right, let's do it. It's one of the most bizarre stories to come out of the war in Afghanistan. But it's been reported by multiple sources. Several eyewitnesses claim the battle not only took the life of an American soldier, but that the government flew the huge corpse of the attacker back to the United States. According to one of the interviews, a special forces team operating in Afghanistan in 2002 encountered one of the creatures while on a patrol looking for a lost unit in an isolated part of the country. The soldier says his unit made its way along a goat path near a cave where the team noticed an unusual pattern of rocks, bones, and ominously a broken piece of communications equipment of the type used by the American military. While pondering this, the team was surprised by a man at least 12 to 15 feet in height. The creature had long red hair and skewered one operator, identified as Dan, with a pike-like weapon. The remainder of the team opened fire, repeatedly shooting the creature in the face and eventually killing it. The full length of the engagement was only about 30 seconds. After the battle, while mourning their fallen comrade, the military sent a helicopter to remove the creature. It was too big, we couldn't move it, the soldier claimed. It smelled worse than a skunk, or a corpse that's been around for a while. The communication was sent out that we had a very large, possibly human creature, but the soldiers were told afterwards to rewrite their after-action reports. The soldier confirmed the giant was armed with a weapon similar to the type identified as a Nephilim lance. George Norrie interviewed one of the pilots of a C-130 who claimed he transported the giant corpse back to a base in Ohio. The pilot said the creature was approximately 12 feet tall and weighed approximately 1,100 pounds. Another soldier said, "We started hearing a rumor about a unit that killed what they were calling a really tall person. At first I didn't think anything of it. I come to find out that the person they killed was actually 3 times the size of a man. It had extra digits on the hands and on the feet, and had red hair. A special unit had come and wanted this target. We'd heard they killed this thing inside a cave or at the mouth of a cave." This was common knowledge among the military to hear this, he said. Years later, I came to find out when I had returned from Afghanistan and had met other military members that had not been in the operations with me. If you would bring up the giant of Kandahar, they'd know what it was. We would hear the locals talk about rumors of these giants, he said. They said they would live in the caves and they would eat people. They were cannibals. At the time, we compared it to the tales of Bigfoot in the United States. Every culture has this kind of folklore. To actually all of a sudden hear that a military unit had killed something, though, and the soldier trailed off. Now, before we get into the interviews here, the first 2 are from L.A. Marzulli's Watcher's Tent DNA DVD. So all the music and the sound effects you hear in it are from the DVD. And the DVD has a lot. It has a lot of other stories in it too about giants and other things. So if you guys want to check it out, please do. I recommend it. Also, one other thing, they masked their voices, so it might be a little hard to understand the soldier sometimes. Let's get to it.
Yeah, air remote, so we flew in. They're about 4 kilometers. We're hiking through the same area where they were supposed to make one of their checkpoints, one of their rally points. And before we'd left, there was all kinds of what happened with the ambush. But that was even odd because at point of ambush, you'd call for maybe close air support, something, okay? There was no calls made, just off the bridge. So we're coming down a mountainside, and it was a nice path, goat path. As we bent around this corner, you could see this opening of the cave. There's a cave as we're coming around. And then I see there's a lot of rocks, which is another oddity, and then bone matter. I'm not close enough to identify what kind of bones, but I did see something I knew was a piece of our communications equipment. So instantly we're thinking ambush, maybe animal, it could be anything. And there was enough room in front of this cave, but it had a sheer drop off. But there was enough room that we actually got into a decent dispersal in case of ambush. And he comes out. It was a man at least 12 to 15 feet in height. This is a monster. Red beard, then his hair was longish past the shoulder, a scarlet red, and Dan runs at him and starts shooting, which broke all of us into the reality. Okay. Muscle memory, complete muscle memory. While Dan is moving at him, another bro of mine's laying down fire and I start firing. He skewers Dan. He's now got him on this pike. It went through him. And he's still got him, and he's coming after more. We all just clicked in. I don't know what it was, but I remember we're all like, shoot him in the face, shoot him in the face. Our weapons components were M4s, we had 308s, and we had Barrett 50s. This is sounding longer than it took. We're talking 30 seconds, and he's taking multiple hits, and it's still moving. Dan was dead, okay? And why is a good man, probably one of the best men I know, now dead. I can confirm it was probably about a 10-foot pole connecting it, lashed, split pole like I guess they would have done back in the old days. Before I'd left, they were already starting what they call a 9-line, which is a medevac request. They're sending out a medevac request, then all of a sudden it's not a medevac request. All of a sudden we had a helicopter show up because, like I told you, it was a large precipice and a sheer drop. So the helicopter just came up from the drop. They had dropped netting, which is like cargo netting. It's like squares. We were told we had to bundle him up. And we get another bigger helicopter, but it's almost like a Jolly Green Giant used to look back in the day that could get, through this area. Because the mountains, you gotta remember, Chinooks could only go in certain places because they had enough lift.
I'm gonna go ahead
and so we got him on there. The thing was too big. We couldn't move it. It smelled worse than a skunk. A corpse that's been around for a while. Oh, it was like a combination because of the, how do you put that? The persistence of a skunk smell. But once the helicopter came in, dropped its little hook, and off he goes. The communication was sent out that we had a very large possible human creature. Of course we're upset. That's a given, okay? We lost a very good guy. But add to that, you're discussing something that even in our after action report, they're saying rewrite it. And we had to rewrite it the way they wanted. Six toes. And the nails were weird because if you see somebody that ever has fungus on the nails, how they get pointy and they're like gnarly, that's what they look like.
Can you imagine that? Imagine being up there on one of the mountaintop cliffs and having that happen. A giant ramming a pike through one of your soldier buddies. Wow. And according to what he said, they came and took that body out of there and shipped him back to America. That's crazy. That is crazy. All right, so the second soldier coming up, he wasn't there when this happened. He was in the military a little bit after that, I think 2 or 3 years after that. But he's going to tell you his stories, how he corroborates it and all that other stuff. And then after that, the third interview is going to be a pilot who flew it out of the area. Let's get to it.
And we're doing those operations, and as we're getting into firefights, we're getting into different scrimmages, you want to put it that way, we would come back to the base and we started hearing this rumor about a unit that killed this, what they started calling this really tall person. At first I didn't think anything of it, and then come to find out that the person that they killed actually was 3 times the size of a man, had extra digits on their hand and digits on their feet, and had red hair, and a special unit had come in and wanted this target. Well, we'd heard that they had killed this thing inside a cave, or the mouth of a cave, and it was common knowledge among the military to hear this. Years later, to come to find out, when I had returned from Afghanistan and had met other military members that had not been there in the operations with me, if you would bring up the giant of Kandahar, they knew about it. When you first hear it, you're thinking like, this has got to be a joke, this has got to be a hoax. But then after things go down a certain way and you keep hearing it, you start to realize it's not a joke. They kept telling us to keep our weapons high, which means normally it's 2 to the chest, 1 to the head, but they kept telling us to put it towards a man's head and put it higher. So we would hear the locals talk about rumors of these giants. They say that they lived in the caves and they would eat people, and they were cannibals. And we, at the time, chalked it up to our United States as Bigfoot. We realized that every culture had some kind of folklore, but to actually all of a sudden hear that a military unit had killed something.
Well, basically, for us, it would be just a normal deployment over to the Middle East, going both directions, I would say, going to Iraq and going into Afghanistan. As the Air Force does it, we do much shorter deployments, but we do a lot of them. Well, on my crew, we had 6 on my crew. When you say hills of Afghanistan, for us, we did not fly into the wilderness. We actually flew into a base. I guess this thing was transloaded out of the mountains by a CH-47. So brought it into the larger air base where we took it out. Well, when we came up, basically came outside, we had a normal 463L pilot loaded down with what they told us was a giant. Okay. When I walked out to it, she was pretty much covered up, and of course the guys were looking at it, laying down next to it, and basically showing its size. couldn't see a whole lot of it, to tell you the truth, because it was covered up. Couldn't poke it, couldn't measure it or anything like that. What I could see that I thought was extremely interesting was that it did have the 6 fingers, and I remember taking my foot up and placing it up next to its foot, and it was extremely large. And when I say large, we're not talking wrestler large here. We're talking, this thing was pretty proportionally sized, more or less like a fairy tale giant type thing. It's the standard size pellet. It's approximately 9 by 7, a little bit bigger than 7 feet. And when it was laying there, it wasn't like just stretched out. It was more or less on its side, curled up in a fetal position and diagonal. And the size to me had to be estimated based on that size, where we estimated at about 12 feet, give or take. What I can tell you is the weight of the thing. Basically, it was approximately 1,500 pounds when it was getting on the aircraft. Now, if you take away the pallet weight and all the rigging that we had to hold this thing down, we figured as around 1,100 pounds. And stepping back a little bit, the babysitters that's what I called them at the time, the babysitters who had come in and out of the mountains, not sure if they were shooters. Well, they would claim to be shooters, and most of those guys do. But they basically said that when they got this thing, it had actually taken out the first crew that had found him, and they went in afterwards. And, of course, when they came up on this thing, supposedly, of course, secondhand, thing ran like the wind, reported to us that threw stones at the guys at a pretty good distance, so they said. And, of course, our weapons did take it out because I was looking at this dead thing. So I was expecting to look a lot more like an Afghani, but when I saw the fingers, at least, it was pretty pasty white, more or less. I would call it Caucasian skinned. Then again, it was dead, so most of it was covered up with the tarps and the rigging and stuff like that. Most of what we had to see, we were just goofing around with and seeing what we could see on this thing, because it was a pretty large dude. It was pretty stinky. I would say related kind of like a musky scented skunk, really. It did actually smell like it was decaying, but it was more than that. But the way they painted it out, yes, this guy was eating probably more than our guys with the killing fields that they more or less described. Again, it was mostly covered up. Could not, poke it, measure it, or anything like that. I can tell you that its hands more or less looked kind of human, very dirty, except for the 6 fingers. It had like canvas over its feet, more or less, like rudimentary shoes that you'd have to put over a foot that was approximately 30 inches or so. We basically took her back to our home base, and she was transloaded on a much faster jet headed back home. Now, again, third hand, I did question some of the stuff to find out, where it was going, and from what we could tell, it was basically transloaded back to a base in Ohio. There's really only one Air Force base in Ohio. Cannot attest to any of the shooter stories, but I can tell you that when you're looking at something as big as that guy was, it was just amazing. And like I said, it wasn't like the WWF wrestlers there who look like they have gigantism or whatever. It was very large and proportional. Insane.
Wow, this story to me, coming from soldiers, carries a lot of weight. And if you guys have watched any of my other videos, you will know that I believe the government hides all kinds of things from us. I believe there are bodies of Sasquatches at the Smithsonian. I believe they're hiding things there. The government keeps a lot of secrets from us, in my opinion. I love my country, don't get me wrong. Red, white, and blue flows through my veins. One quick thing I'll tell you guys about me. My family has been here since 1620. Fought in the Revolutionary War, all that stuff. Alright, so if you guys liked the video, make sure you hit that like button for me, share it, do all that good stuff. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button and hit that notification bell. That's where we're going to leave it. Make sure you guys always remember, where there is a WILLSTAR, there is definitely a way. And we will talk to you guys later. Take care.